So the assignment for tonight is 6.1 practice. Going over this a little bit later as far as how to answer each one of these. But again, what you need to do is pull out your periodic table. We're going to do some coloring today. Now, in your wakelet or in your notebook, you should already have the periodic table. I hope that what happened was when we were working on the SPDF part that you were supposed to outline on your periodic table, you did that on the periodic table you have in your notebook, all right? So as far as on your wakelet, if you have a digital notebook, the periodic table that you have in your notebook, it should be the one that you're annotating on, so that when you are finished, you will have those notes. You're having all the coloring and those guidelines to help you out, all right? So if you have not been doing that, make sure you do it. Whatever wakelet you are, or whatever periodic table that you are doing your coloring on, make sure that's the one that's in your notebook where it says periodic table, all right? Not the blank one, all right? It was blank when we started, but it should have some coloring in there now, okay? So go ahead and pull that up, periodic table, either in your physical notebook or in your wakelet. Go ahead and open that up so that we can work on it, okay? So this is the periodic table. This is what yours is going to look like. All right. Yours is actually going to have a little bit more because for mine, for this one right here, all it has is the coloring for the different element classes that we're going to be going over today. All right. What you should already have is a periodic table that is blocked off, okay, for your SPDF levels. All right. So it should be something like this, similar to this. Is what you already should have done. All right, we'll show you where as far as, and this was for the shortcut for the periodic, looking at your electron configuration. So what happened is when you were writing out your electron configuration based on where they were, you could tell if the last thing you were writing in your electron configuration was going to end in an S, was it going to end in a D, was it going to end in a P, depending on where, or an F, depending on where it was on the periodic table. All right. So you had everything blocked off there. Should not have been colored in, okay, because that's what you're doing today is coloring it in for something else, identifying the element classes. Right, so your periodic table, as far as the organization, they are grouped based on their properties. So keeping things together as far as elements that would have similar properties or may react similarly to different elements, to other elements in reactions, they are grouped together. So before we get started, what I need you to do is write this on your periodic table. So if you are looking at across, looking at a row, now I had said previously when we were looking at these numbers here, I said that these were energy levels. So energy level 1, energy level 2, energy level 3, all the way down to 7. So what these are actually called, these rows are called periods. That's the formal name for it. So on your periodic table, write that down. Okay, so if you're reading across, if you are in the rows, you are in what's called periods. If I am referring to period 1, that means you are in this top row. If I say I'm referring to period 4, that means you need to move down and you need to look at this row. Okay? So horizontally, those are called periods. Make sure to write that down. Vertically, so in this column right here, that is called a group. Those are groups. All right? So this is group 1, or it's group 1A. As far as your periodic table, you have two numbering systems. You have the one that goes from 1, this is group 1, this is group 2, this is group 3, okay? And you can read all the way across to group 18. Okay, those are vertical columns. But you also have these the numbers that have the letters on them, so like the 1A, 2A, all right, 3B, all the way over to, this is 3A, 4A working down, and then it goes all the way to 8A. So depending on what reference you are looking at, okay, what textbook you are using, or questions on a test, it may refer to them with the numbers that don't have the letters on them, or it may refer to the groups by the lettered group numbers. All right. All right. So make sure you have, again, groups. They're called groups or families when you're working down vertically. Groups or families. Horizontally, these are called periods. Make sure you know the names for those. Those will appear on a quiz. Or on a question, it may ask you what group something is in or what period something's on. All right? Are there any questions so far? All right, so up top here, again, what happens with the periodic table, you have grouping based on properties. All right? So basically, everything that is in the same group is going to react similarly to each other. All right, they have the same properties or similar properties to each other. Everything within the group. So if I was looking at something like, let's say I had these three right here that I was looking at: lithium, beryllium, sodium, and I'm looking specifically at sodium. And my question to you is, which one has similar properties to sodium? Would it be lithium or beryllium? Which one would have similar properties to sodium? Again, would it be lithium or beryllium? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. So lithium or beryllium, which one would have similar properties as sodium? Good, thank you. It is lithium, all right? So again, if it is in the same group, it has similar properties. And that is similar to the kind of questions that you're going to have on this worksheet, all right? It may ask you about something like calcium and ask you to list a couple of elements that have similar properties. Remember that you're looking for things that are in the same group, all right? Same group means it's going to have same properties, okay? So as far as the different groups that we're going to be looking at, classes or categories that are in the periodic table, these are the ones that we'll be looking at, all right? So if you notice, I have a different color because you are doing coloring today. So you're going to need to pull out some pencils or use just your, as far as the drawing, pick the different colors when you're using your Cami to annotate your periodic table. So I don't know if on the Cami you can actually color it in solid like this, or if you need to, you can do just like scribble lines. So if you need to pick a certain color, I have a block that I need to color in, and you can just pick a color and scribble over it a little bit like this, just in a specific color so that you know what it is, okay? So that was showing scribbles, just scribbling in colors over something, all right? Pick a specific color if you're not able to completely fill it in. So the first one we have is alkali metals. Alkali metals. Alkali metals. Alkali, no N-E, okay, it's just A-L-K-A-L-I, metals. And that is going to be, if you look here, it is your group 1 elements with the exception of hydrogen. If you notice, hydrogen is a different color. So it is from lithium, down to francium. These are your alkali metals. Again, we will take notes on these, 6.1, and go over the specific characteristics of alkali metals and the rest of these groups. Okay, what we will just need you to do is get them down. So today is just working on identifying the groups. Okay, just identifying the groups. All right, so those are alkali metals. This second group here, which is all of group 2, from beryllium down to radium. You notice that's a different color. That is not the same color as this. Okay, so just group 2. These are called alkaline earth metals. Alkaline earth metals. Alkaline earth metals. See if I can get this a little clearer. Maybe that looks better. Okay, that works a little bit better. Let me know if you have trouble seeing it. Okay, so again we have alkaline earth metals here. Okay, and that was your group 2. Group 2 here. All the way down to radium. You do need to put the names on the periodic table, so you need a key. So not just coloring in here, but you're able to identify by color. So I colored it in here, but then what happened was I put a mark at the top with that color and with the name. All right, so this is going to help you identify the different groups. So it's really important that you have this, otherwise you're not going to know what the colors stand for. Okay, so again, this first group, except for hydrogen, the rest of them in this group 1 are called alkali metals. Those in the second group, all of it from beryllium all the way down to radium, okay, those were your alkaline earth, and look at the name, it's a little bit different. It ends in I-N-E, not alkali, alkaline earth metals. That's the second group. Don't forget to write down this information if you haven't. Periods is reading horizontally across the chart, periodic table. If you're looking down vertically here in a column, those are called groups. Okay, groups or families. All right, the next one that you have, these are your D, the ones that ended with the D sublevel. Okay, your D orbitals. Okay, these are all called transition metals. Okay, the ones that ended with the D are called transition metals. Transition metals. Elements, if you were writing the electron configuration, they ended with a D. They ended with electrons in the D orbital. Transition metals. Okay, next, does anyone need me to wait? Everyone's caught up? Okay, All right, the next one, let's look at the your F sublevel. Look, as far as with the electron configurations, they ended in an F. So that was these two. These are your F1s. These were your F2s. Okay, all the way to the end, except for those two. Remember, those were D1s. So these are your transition metals. Make sure they're the same color as up here. And you have a different color for the ones that ended with an F. Okay, the ones that end with an F are called inner transition metals. Inner transition metals. So again, your inner transition metals, your F sublevel ended with your Fs. Lanthanum, actinium, those are your F1s. And then F2 through F14. Remember, these were D1s at the end, so those are a part of your transition metals. Next group here, group 17 or group 7A, this group right here. All right, so this is group 17 or group 7A. These are called halogens. 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 So again, your halogens are group 7A. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we should be familiar with this last group. Go ahead and type your answer in the chat. What is the name of this group? We use them with the electron configurations. The abbreviated form, what are they called? Good, those are your noble gases. So helium all the way down to the end, all of them. Okay, those were all your noble gases. So pick another color, add it to your key for noble gases. And again, that's helium all the way down. Next one. Okay, this is a dividing line for the periodic table. Periodic table is divided into three main categories. Three. Okay, they are metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. All right, metals, nonmetals, and metalloids are the three main categories. Now, if I walk into this room and I look at something, I look at, happen my thermos is sitting on the table. This is metal. I know it's made up of metal. If I look at my lamp, I know it's metal. If I look at my filing cabinet, yeah, that's metal. How do I know that it's metal? What are some things that kind of stick out for you when you're identifying metals? You can go ahead and put something in the chat. How do you know a metal when you see it? Okay, I see color and feel, shiny properties. Yes, shiny, reflective. Okay, good. Color. All right. Okay, so those are some things. So there are certain properties that metals have, there are certain properties that nonmetals have, and that metalloids have. So one of the things that you pointed out, okay, as far as the metals, is that it's shiny. That's called luster. Okay, they tend to be shiny. Something else about metals is that they conduct electricity, all right, and heat. So if I have something, you think about it, if I wanted to cook my breakfast in the morning on the stovetop, would styrofoam be a good way to cook? Let's say I wanted to fry eggs. Would doing it on styrofoam be a good way to do it? No? What's my pan made out of if I'm cooking eggs? What's the pan made out of? It's made out of metal. Because what happens is your heat, that heat travels through that metal really well. It conducts heat, all right? It conducts electricity. Something else about metal, it is strong, all right? So it's not very brittle. I don't expect it to break up. I can take my pan and bang it on something. I don't expect it to break into pieces, okay? Because metal is very strong. Metal can actually be stretched, okay, into wires. That's why you can make wire, is because it's stretchable, all right? But again, it's still very strong material. So those are some examples of metals. Now, nonmetals, how could you tell the difference between a nonmetal and a metal? What can you say about nonmetals? What can we say about nonmetals? Things that are not metal. How would you describe them? Do they tend to be shiny? No? Are they as strong as metals? Not so much. So if I took a piece of plastic and I banged it against the table, it probably wouldn't last very long, right? Okay, so I see dull, brittle, okay, breaks up very easily. Not a good conductor of electricity, all right? Don't we use nonmetals as insulators? So if I have my hot coffee, I'm not going to put it in just a metal container. And when I say metal, I'm not talking about like a thermos. Okay, so thermos is not just a single layer of metal. All right, it's made in a way. It's probably got a vacuum space inside that actually makes it possible for it to insulate. All right, but if you have if I have some kind of container. I know they used to have them like on bicycles as far as the water, like the water containers, but they're metal. You put water in there, cold water, you immediately feel that coldness on the outside. All right? If you had something like you put hot water in there, not a good idea because you're going to burn your hand. The heat's going to go straight through. All right? So, but as far as your things that are non-metals, all right, like plastic and things that are plastic, what it's made of, your styrofoam, we use those kind of things in order to insulate because they don't conduct heat very well. They don't carry heat very well. They don't carry electricity very well. All right? So those are some examples of properties of nonmetals. They're dull, they're brittle, they don't conduct heat very well or electricity very well. And then you have, so that's metals and nonmetals. And then we have a third class that is called metalloids, also known as semi-metals. Because what happens is your metalloids actually have properties of both metals and nonmetals. So they're like almost like an in-between, all right? They have some of the properties of metals, but not all of them. They have some properties of nonmetals, but not all of them. Okay? So your periodic table, again, you'll take notes on these next class, so you're going to write this material down. But what you just need to get in your head today is just know the three major classes that the periodic table is broken up into: metals, nonmetals, and metalloids, and know just a couple of differences between them. Okay, so that's what we just talked about. Now, so on the periodic table, it is broken up into those three main classes. All right, so here are your metalloids, the ones that have properties of both metals and nonmetals. So something like silicon is used in computers, all right, and chips. What happens is this is a nonmetal. It's not shiny, but it can conduct electricity. All right, so it's brittle. It's not as strong as a metal, but again, it can conduct electricity. So anyway, so these are your metalloids. They have properties of both metals and nonmetals. Think of this as your staircase. There's a staircase, and this is where your metalloids fall. But it is also your dividing line between your metals and your nonmetals. So metalloids are here. That's the stuff that I have in green. Everything else that is to the left, everything else on this chart that is to the left, so here's my metalloids, everything to the left, and down here, all of this, these are all metals. Your metalloids is your dividing line. And everything to the right, all of these are nonmetals. Okay? Nonmetals some of the nonmetals are in specific groups, meaning they have specific properties that they share in common, right? That we need to, just major groups that we need to know. But again, everything to the right, these are nonmetals. Everything to the left and everything down here is a metal. Okay? So metalloids, write that down, give it a color. Metalloids. Okay, and then they are the elements along the staircase. So when you look at this, think about it as if you were walking up the stairs. If you are stepping on the stair, so if it's an element that is on the stair, here's a step, step, it is a metalloid. Or it can be underneath the step, directly underneath the step. In this case, it goes down, except for aluminum. Okay, aluminum is not a metalloid. We know what aluminum is, all right? Your soda cans are made of what? When I go buy soda, what are they made of, those cans? Put it in the chat. Do we know what cans are made of? What type of metal cans are made of? The soda cans? Yes, aluminum. All right, so those are aluminum cans. You're recycling aluminum cans, hopefully. Okay. All right, so these are all your metalloids. They have properties of metals and nonmetals. Another name for them is semi-metal. All right? So make sure you block those off. Again, everything that is to the right, carbon, nitrogen, iodine, doesn't matter what color it is over here. Those are just for specific groups. But these are all to the right. These are all nonmetals. Everything to the left and on the bottom, those are all metals. So one of the things that you should be able to do, if I just go through and I point to something on the periodic table, you should be able, and I ask you, is it a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? I point to it, you should just be really able quickly to rattle it off. Metal. That's a nonmetal. That's a metal. That's a metalloid. And we're going to try this right now. Okay? So, and I want you to go ahead and say it out loud. Again, this is not picking up any of that. All right? So don't worry about that, but I do need you to say it out loud so we can go through this quickly. Okay? Oh, and there's going to be a little mini quiz. So there's something that's going to go into Google Classroom pretty soon. It's a 5-point quiz. So make sure you're participating in here so you know what to do. All right? So I'm going to point to something. Everybody unmute. All I want to hear is metal, nonmetal, or metalloid? Just pick one, okay? All right, unmute. I'm looking at your screens. I'm looking for that little microphone. Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right, so we're just going to do this real quick. This one, metal, non-metal, or metalloid? Okay, so we're not gonna do it that way. Go ahead and put your yes, thank you. Go ahead and mute yourself. Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. All right, so metal, non-metal, or metalloid? Whatever I'm pointing at. Those are your choices. Is it metal, non-metal, or metalloid? Okay, good. That's metal. What about this one? Good, that's a metal. Okay, so remember, everything to the left of the staircase, everything to the left and everything on the bottom, these are all metals. All right, what about this one? Look at where my pencil is pointing. It's pointing at SB. Semi-metal or metalloid. What about this? Chlorine. Non-metal, good. What about helium? Non-metal. Okay, so yes, it is a noble gas, but that is if I'm asking for the specific group. In general, if your question is it a metal, metalloid, or non-metal, you're going to write non-metal. Okay, one more. What about aluminum? Aluminum. Okay, good. Aluminum's a metal. All right, so what I want to do is just go ahead and finish up this chart. There's one little section left for you to do. This brown section here, okay, it has these, and also the hydrogen over here is the same color. Okay, it's brown on mine. Okay, listing those as nonmetals. Again, everything to the right of the staircase, those are all nonmetals. So think of this as, these are just nonmetals with no specific group name attached to them. Okay, like we had the alkali metals and we had, halogens, and then there were the noble gases. All right, so those are nonmetals with specific names for their groups. These right here don't have any specific names. They're just nonmetals. All right, so color them, put them as nonmetals. Make sure you color the hydrogen also, because that's also nonmetal. Okay, so again, your hydrogen is also non-metal. Okay, so write nonmetal, give it a color. All right, and then you can put it here. So then what happens is I have students ask me, why aren't these colored? It's just I haven't come up with a color for, I didn't put that in there. If you want to color these a different color and just label them as other metals, okay, so these would have been other non-metals. These are other metals, okay. They don't have a specific name for their groups, but they are still metals. So if you want to color it in just because you don't want to have a spot on there, that's fine. Give it a color and then you can label them as just metals, okay, or other metals, however you want to do it. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to finish that up, and then I want to talk about your assignments. I'll give you a couple minutes to finish up the one question that I have for you in Google Classroom. It does count as a quiz, so make sure that you do it before the class ends. Okay, so while you're finishing that up, I don't think this is going to mess you up. Let me go into Google Classroom real quick. So the assignment, that one quick 5-point mini quiz that I told you about, that is in Google Classroom right now. You can go to do that if you're just waiting. Otherwise, make sure you get it in before the end of the period. Okay, does anyone else need the periodic table before I switch to the assignment? Just want to give you some instructions regarding the assignment. All right, I'm going to be switching screens, the papers. All right, so this is the one. Probably after class, I'll go ahead and load this. About 10 minutes after class, I need to scan it first, and then it will be in Google Classroom. But this is what it looks like. All right, so the first section here, you're going to use Cami to annotate. Number 1 says, which element listed below should have chemical properties similar to fluorine? Okay, so how would you know if something has similar properties? What did we say as far as how this is organized? How will you know if it has similar properties? Put an answer in the chat, please. How do I know if something has similar properties, let's say to calcium? How would I know? Good. Okay, they are in the same group. So that means strontium, barium, radium, magnesium, beryllium will all have the same properties as calcium. So what you're doing on number 1 here is they're telling you it's fluorine. You're just going to circle, since you're using Cami, circle whichever ones apply. Okay, which element or elements listed below should have chemical properties similar to fluorine. Number 2 says identify each element as a metal, metalloid, or nonmetal. That means next to each one of these, I should see metal, nonmetal, or metalloid. Pick one. Okay, so every single one of these for number 2 should have an answer. Number 3, which of the following is not a transition metal? So again, looking at what you colored, okay, looking at what you colored on your periodic table, you're looking for, out of this list, the one that is not a transition metal. Okay, number 4 says name, make sure you do 2. It says name two elements that have properties similar to those of the element potassium. Okay, so find potassium and then let's name 2 elements, any 2 elements that have similar properties to that. Last one, elements in the periodic table can be divided into 3 broad classes. What were the 3 classes that we talked about? Just to make sure you remember, put it in the chat. What are the 3 classes that we talked about? Periodic table is broken up into 3 main classes. What are they? Good. Okay, so metals, nonmetals, metalloids, and then it says so list the classes, and then don't forget to answer the second part of the question. What are these classes? How do they differ? So just put a couple of characteristics that we talked about. So how do you know metals? What can we say about nonmetals? What can we say about metalloids? All right? And that's what you're going to do. That is your assignment, and it will be in by noon. Okay? Are there any questions? All right, did anyone still need the periodic table? Okay, so you've got 3 minutes. I'm going to hang around. You are too, until the bell rings. In case you have any questions, I'll go ahead and get the practice problems in, that assignment in. All right, otherwise, that is it for today. Remember that 6.1 notes we are covering next class. If you missed the quiz from last period, make sure you show up tomorrow, lunchtime, to make it up, because grading period ends this Friday. And once the grading period is over, you cannot go back and make up any quizzes that you've missed for this grading period. All right?